Loosening the grip of comparison. Transforming comparison by honoring the gifts we carry within us. Quote, "Don't compare your insides to other people's outsides." Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been reflecting a lot lately on comparison, especially in how I evaluate myself in relation to others. We live in a world that thrives on competition, not only in sports or careers, but also in creativity, relationships, and even how we present ourselves online. Who has the better job, the nicer house, the larger audience? Who is growing faster or achieving more? Whether intentionally or not, it can feel like we're constantly being measured and measuring in return. For myself, I've been reducing my online inputs for some time now. I've stepped back from most social channels, and when I do engage, I try to be intentional, focus more on connection and sharing my work than on consuming content. Yet even with these boundaries, comparison still finds its way in. It tends to surface when I see another writer's work accompanied by hundreds of comments or a follower count that dwarfs mine. Something inside me tightens, and I begin to question my worth. As I mentioned earlier this week, comparison is not a personal flaw. It is an inheritance. Our ancestors compared themselves with others to assess danger, gauge belonging, and discern their place in the group. This instinct helped them survive, and it lives on in us. In our vocations, writing, teaching, creating, or however we feel called, we naturally look around. We want to learn, orient, and improve. But when we begin to rely on external metrics to determine our value, we risk comparing our inner selves to others' polished exteriors. That is where comparison turns painful. This shows up just as strongly in relationships. I've carried a finely tuned awareness since childhood, one that helped me gauge safety and avoid rejection. It allowed me to anticipate the emotional weather in a room and adjust accordingly. But as an adult, this instinct often backfires. It turns inward, scanning me instead of the environment, measuring what I believe is wrong within me against whatever appears to be right in everyone else. This way of comparing causes me to lose my center. It moves my sense of belonging outside myself, and it narrows my vision until I can no longer see what is true. As I was examining this pattern, I found myself returning to the story of the cracked pot. In the story, a woman carries 2 pots to the well each day. One is new and whole, the other is worn and cracked. Each time they return home, the new pot arrives full, while the cracked pot arrives half empty. In its sadness, the worn pot compares itself to the unblemished pot and concludes that it is not as good, not as useful. One day, the woman overhears its sorrows. With gentleness, she invites it to pay attention to their next walk. "Look down at the path," she says. So the pot watches, and this time it notices something it had never seen before. On the side of the path where it hangs, wildflowers bloom in vibrant colors. On the other side, the ground is bare. When they reach home, the woman speaks softly. "You see, your cracks have been watering these flowers every day. What you see as a flaw is the very thing bringing beauty into the world." The truth is, we rarely see the flowers growing because of our cracks. We look only at what we leak, not what we nourish. Comparison obscures what is quietly blooming because of our wounds, not despite them. So how do we step out of comparison and towards compassion? We can look to the wise woman in the story. She didn't shame the pot for feeling sad. She didn't rush to correct it or tell it to be grateful. Instead, she stayed close, acknowledged its pain, and helped it see what was already true. This is the posture of compassion, one we must learn to extend toward ourselves. When comparison rises, our task is not to shut it down, but to turn toward the part of us that feels small, scared, or inadequate. We can guide ourselves the way the woman guided the pot, with tenderness, not reprimand, with curiosity, not judgment. For this, I often return to Tara Brach's R.A.I.N practice. Recognize what is happening, allow it to be there, investigate with gentleness, and nurture what needs care. When comparison surfaces, this practice helps us soften around the feeling rather than tighten against it. Richard Rohr writes in The Tears of Things, quote, "All things have tears, and all things deserve tears." End quote. Every one of us carries pain. Every one of us has places where we feel cracked. What we show on the outside is often our most curated self. But behind every polished surface is someone holding sorrow, longing, and stories that are not visible at first glance. When we pause, hand on heart, breath steady, and remember the complexity within every person we encounter, something shifts. Comparison gives way to compassion, and compassion opens us again to ourselves. We begin to see that our value is not found in what others achieve, or how we measure up, or how visible our efforts are to the world. Our value is inherent, expressed in the quiet ways we nourish the ground around us simply by being who we are. When we learn to meet ourselves with compassion, comparison loosens its grip, and what we once envied in others becomes a reminder of what is already within us, waiting to be tended, honored, and seen. With warmth and gratitude, Brooke.